Hidden costs suck, especially if you're new to the thing that you're buying. I mean, you spend weeks, months, maybe even years squirreling away your pocket money to discover that no, the thing you want to buy is actually a lot more expensive than you thought it was because of all the extras. And while it might have been possible to forego that shiny 5¼ inch floppy drive for a Tandy cassette player and an audio cable to go with your family's first computer 40 years ago, and in primary school you got pretty good at that pencil cassette trick as a consequence, grown-up you knows that when it comes to some things in life, you just can't avoid hidden costs. Cars are one such example. You can't skimp on servicing or maintenance, and you can't skimp on insurance, because if you want to own and drive a car on the road, you have to have insurance. Or rather, if you want to avoid becoming best friends with the local court staff and inevitably the local bus drivers. How much you pay for your insurance will depend on a lot of things, like how quickly your car will go from 0 to zoomy, how many zeros in the price tag, and if you've got a non-zero number of accidents on your driving record. Insurance companies also want to know your age, your address, your blood type, and what type of coverage you like, as well as what you're going to be using the car for. Oh, and pro tip? Answering that last question with, duh, driving it is not an acceptable answer. I've tried. In recent years, cars with semi-autonomous features and cars with active or passive safety tech designed to prevent crashes have rewarded their owners with lower insurance premiums compared to similar cars without those features. But to date, even when a car has advanced driver assistance tech on board, if that car hits something or someone, you're ultimately the person at fault. And that, as I'm sure many of you know, means your insurance goes up the next time you renew. Yet last week, Mercedes-Benz became the very first company in the world to state that if its Drive Pilot semi-autonomous driver assistance system crashes while engaged on the road, you won't be liable. Mercedes-Benz will be. And today, I'm going to explain why that is such a big deal, as well as detail some of the truck-size loopholes and caveats that currently exist with that promise. But first, it's the time in the video where I ask you to help us grow by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, and making the little bell ring. We know that just over 1/2 of you watching aren't subscribed, and we'd like to decrease that statistic and get you all subbed up. And unlike Kate's insurance company telling her that putting alloy wheels on a Yugo would make it very costly to insure, doing this will cost you nothing. Just a few seconds. Although if you would like to send some cold hard currency our way, I'll tell you how at the end. Back to the video. As I'm sure you know, every car company out there has its own name for the car does some kind of driving hardware and or software. Tesla has Autopilot, Nissan uses ProPilot, and Ford and GM duke it out over Blue Cruise and Super Cruise. The latest iteration of Mercedes-Benz system, known as Drive Pilot, is capable of operating at SAE Level 3 autonomy. That means it lets you take your eyes off the road and your hands off the wheel in certain situations, which is very different to most other semi-autonomous systems out there. But like every other implementation in use today, you need to remain alert and behind the wheel at all times, ready to take over. Tesla's Autopilot, not even FSD, nor in fact any other system in use today, are capable of Level 3 operation. And because Drive Pilot is now at Level 3 on the 5-level SAE autonomous driving scale, Mercedes-Benz is assuming all liability for any crashes that take place while Drive Pilot is operational. And if you think about it, that makes sense because no driver input is required, so you can technically doom scroll what Elon has been saying on Twitter or make sweet goo-goo eyes to your front seat passenger without the car suddenly veering off the road. Mercedes-Benz, in a very telling display of the type of people it thinks drives its cars, even suggests you could, quote, read a book. But honestly, I don't know that many people who carry books with them these days. I mean, I do it occasionally, but yeah. Anyway, I say technically for all of those actions because, well, there is a level of trust that you'd have to have in the system to be ready to actually take your eyes off the road. And because while this isn't a pie-in-the-sky promise, it is only currently approved for use on German highways. California and Nevada are expected to allow it shortly. Use it elsewhere, and you're probably going to get pulled over. So far so good, I hear you say. So what is the catch? Oh, there is a big catch. A huge one. I'm talking about Rudy's 72 World Series catch, or perhaps more fitting for a Brit, Paul Collingwood's famous catch to stop Matthew Hayden's slashed hit from sailing over the boundary to become 6 runs. Right now, as we film this, Drive Pilot is not the chauffeur that lets you sit back and enjoy a glass of champers. Aside from being illegal to drink and drive, please don't. The system is limited to a top speed of 60 kilometers per hour, which is just under 40 miles per hour. It is also only usable on pre-mapped highways and will not engage unless the weather is clear. So no good in Portland then. Once engaged though, because it is level 3, it does a whole lot more than most autonomous systems in use today, including autopilot FSD. Promising 10 seconds of warning before a driver needs to resume manual control, Mercedes claims Drive Pilot is capable of handling new situations all by itself. This means the car should deal with construction, road obstacles, and being cut off by aggressive sods, or moving over for emergency vehicles without input. In fact, that last one is one of the examples being used by Mercedes-Benz in its official video of said system in operation. Mercedes-Benz assuming liability while Drive Pilot is in use is frankly an enormous vote of confidence in the system and answers a question about autonomous driving that goes back a long way. And I guess I should probably know. I mean, I've been covering the world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter cars for a long time. I started when I was a fresh-faced 26-year-old. And I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore. In 2016, I was one of many journalists on a call with Tesla CEO Elon Musk. After he announced that all new Teslas would come with the hardware necessary for driver-free autonomous driving, the call was open for questions. I went first, and I asked about Tesla assuming liability for any accidents while Teslas were operating in autopilot, or rather, what it would become, autopilot full self-driving. A week or so earlier, Volvo had promised to indemnify its customers if its autonomous driving systems were being used at the time of a collision, so it seemed like an appropriate question. But my question wasn't well received. After saying that no, Tesla wouldn't assume liability for its cars operating autonomously in most situations, Elon got pretty tetchy. He claimed that journalists asking about the safety of autonomous cars, specifically autopilot, were spreading misinformation about the system, and ultimately that would result in journalists, quote, killing people. I know some folks will assume I'm bringing this up to be bitter or to grind an axe, but in the context of the video, that interaction, which was the last time, by the way, I or anyone else from this company was asked to a Tesla event or a press call, is kind of an important background to Mercedes-Benz announcement. As I just mentioned, while Mercedes-Benz is going to be the first automaker in the US to introduce a Level 3 autonomous driving system in a privately sold vehicle, Volvo is also looking to do the same thing and has been planning to do for years. At CES 2022, it unveiled Ride Pilot, a Level 3 system that is very close in its operation to Mercedes-Benz's system. And aside from the ongoing agony that I feel about companies all desperately trying to come up with similar innovative names for their systems and failing to just call it the same thing and always failing, it's likely that both companies are trying hard to get regulatory approval for road use, which of course will then pave the way for everyone else to join in. At a time when most of the oxygen in the autonomous vehicle space is being taken up by robo-taxi and ride-sharing plans, Mercedes' Drive Pilot is certainly different. On this channel, we recently covered NHTSA's announcement that fully autonomous vehicles will no longer require traditional controls like pedals or steering wheels, and typically, when self-driving is discussed, it's companies like Waymo, Cruise, and sometimes Tesla that come to mind. All of those firms envision a future where cars will be able to drive themselves without an occupant under all kinds of circumstances. So what about Drive Pilot? Well, Drive Pilot matters because it's coming from Mercedes-Benz. It's a company with a long history of championing new technology, much of which has become staple features in cars we drive today. Anti-lock brakes, crumple zones, and much, much more have been offered as standard long before their rivals adopted them. I mean, I remember riding in an S-Class with radar-assisted cruise control when most automakers were still charging extra for electric windows. And while it doesn't always succeed, we're talking about a company that doesn't introduce stuff to customers because it thinks it's ready. There's no beta testing going on here, but then I suspect Tesla gets away with that because Tesla owners like the idea of beta testing to help the company. Pretty sure a Mercedes-Benz owner would not feel the same way. The TLDR? Mercedes considers the Drive Pilot to be a fully functional Level 3 autonomous driving system. For now, it's within pretty narrow operating conditions, but that's still pretty big. And because Mercedes-Benz, like most companies now, offers over-the-air updates, expect those restrictions to expand. Mercedes-Benz already showcases its system operating at what I think are higher speeds on test tracks, and I suspect that means it's more a case of legislation catching up than anything else. But we shouldn't forget, as Elon Musk regularly notes, full autonomous driving is way more difficult than pretty much anyone originally assumed. Waymo and Cruise, while now operating driverless vehicles in some cities, are still using geofenced roads with a human available via remote control to take over if the vehicle has a problem figuring out what happens next. Tesla, meanwhile, it's going all out with what it currently has that sits somewhere between Level 2 and Level 3, utilising volunteer customers to beta test the technology, which will eventually underpin higher level autonomous operation. And no, regardless of what you may have heard, Tesla's technology is currently not Level 3, because you need to remain attentive and be ready to take over at all times. Neither is Ford's Blue Cruise or GM's Super Cruise, or in fact any other semi-autonomous tech on the market today. They all require the driver to be doing something to prove they're awake and alert. Moreover, all of these technologies started on higher speed roads first. But Mercedes-Benz is approaching its deployment differently, first deploying its technology on highways with a lower speed limit, testing the water and giving owners true hands-off, eyes-off autonomous operation before then increasing the top speed at which the system will operate. So why assume liability, and why is it such a big deal? First off, it's a very Mercedes-Benz thing to do. The brand isn't one to launch half-ready tech, but there's also a level of luxury and reassurance that comes from saying, it's okay, we've got your back if something goes awry. I don't know why Mercedes sounds very plumb British. It's about trying not to inconvenience its customers, to handle all of the messy things, and to be able to turn around and say, yes, we have this under control. Any visit to a Mercedes-Benz dealership with its high-end espresso machine, comfortable chairs, and choice of 6 different types of sparkling mineral water tells you that customer experience is a huge deal for the company. I know I used to have a smart car serviced at a Mercedes dealership. And of course, this is all about offering something nobody else does, being above the pack and ahead of the pack. As it was with so many technologies in the past, Mercedes considers itself to be a technology leader, and you can view this as an attempt to set an industry standard. And frankly, in the wild, wild west of self-driving legislation, 1,000,001 different names for the same freaking thing, and no clear standard in sight, an industry standard and an industry leader would be very good indeed. And if you can lead, you can help set the expectation for the standard. And I would argue that being the first company to have Level 3 functionality in the wild makes you the leader. Are there alternatives, though, to Mercedes-Benz approach? Absolutely. Tesla has talked about its own insurance product as a way to mitigate liability issues, because some insurance brokers are still a little wary of semi-autonomous tech, so working with a specialist broker to offer a bespoke service, or in fact, becoming an insurance broker yourself to do the same thing, has an advantage. But then I also think part of the reason automakers are branching out into insurance is because, 1, they want to ensure they can get back expensive components like battery packs from wrecked cars. 2, they want to limit the number of crash cars in circulation in the used car market as rebuilt vehicles. And 3, It's an additional revenue stream in a world of tightening margins. But then, I'm kind of skeptical like that. Finally though, there's an element of gatekeeping. If Mercedes-Benz's system is as good as it says, and doesn't get into accidents, it's a win-win for the company. If its vehicles are unlikely to have an accident, it won't need to pay out large sums of money in insurance claims. But it will also encourage other companies to put their money where their metaphorical mouths are. And yes, I know it's more like a soulless void than a mouth in the case of some companies, but, well, let's stick with this here for a second. If a company doesn't have the tech that's up to snuff, it won't be comfortable offering liability. And that would be a really great way to pick out which companies are good and which ones are just playing at being good. That's it for today. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to leave your thoughts below or in our free to join Discord chat room. There are links below. It's good fun. If you haven't already, make sure you've subscribed to this channel and our other channel, Transport Evolved Take 2, and give that bell a gentle little ding to make sure you're told when our next video goes live. Thanks on behalf of the entire crew for the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month supporters. Special thanks to our $50 a month supporters, that's Chris Maxwell, Bennett Elder, Brian Newton, Dave Kitchen, Michael Goad, Ricky Leon, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla and the Gong, Gordon C, Stephen O'Donoghue, Carl Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Raging Fellows, Rory Litwin, Anonymous Freak, Jim Burness, Zachary Courtney, Chris Centaur and Denny Hyde, and our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters. They are Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, Joe Bresney, JP Fagerback, Will Graylin, Matthew Drobnak, John Lyons, Christopher Lee Jones, Andrew Glenn, Paul Conway, Laura Reynolds, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. If you're listening to that list and thinking, I'd like a bit of that action, you can become a Patreon supporter by following the link below, or you can hit the join button on the YouTube page where you're probably watching this video. Or, if you feel so inclined, just hit us up by sending us some Ko-fi, Bitcoin, or buying something from our cool swag store. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving!